The year is 2023. The month is October. The air smells of diesel fuel and drying corn. A Peterbilt 389, chrome shining, pulls onto the inbound scale. The truck groans to a stop. The air brakes hiss, a long, tired sigh. Inside the cab sits Frank Miller. He is 68 years old. His hands are thick with a lifetime of gripping a steering wheel. He has driven this route for 45 years. He knows every crack in the pavement, every dip in the road between here and the Johnson place. A young woman slides open the window of the scale house. She smiles. A real smile, not a corporate forced smile. She hands him the scale ticket. Frank takes it. A familiar ritual, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. He glances down at the paper. Gross weight, tare weight, moisture content, 15.8%. Good. Then his eyes land on the name printed at the top. Vance Grain Cooperative. And below that, in smaller letters, owner, Leo Vance. Frank Miller stops. He just stops. His breath catches for a second. The name is on the sign out front, 50 feet tall. It's on the hats of the guys sweeping the grain pit. It's on the side of the brand new grain leg that towers over the county. But seeing it here, on this piece of paper in his hand, it felt different. It felt final. The young woman in the window tilts her head. "Everything okay, Mr. Miller?" Frank doesn't answer right away. He looks past her into the office. On the far wall, mounted like a trophy, is a steering wheel. Old, black, cracked plastic. From a truck long since turned to rust. He knows that wheel. He knows that story. He clears his throat. "Yeah, everything is fine. Just a long memory." Frank Miller was a good man, a decent man. He coached Little League for 20 years, served on the church board. He was the kind of man who would never intentionally hurt anyone, which is why he could never forget the autumn of 1983, the day he looked a 19-year-old kid with that same last name in the eye and told him no. This is the kind of story we tell here. The ones buried under topsoil and time. The stories about quiet work and long memories, about the moments that change everything, even if nobody hears the sound. If you believe those stories matter, if you believe they need to be told, subscribe to this channel, because we are just getting started, and there are so many more harvests to bring in. Let me take you back. The year is 1983. Ronald Reagan is president. A gallon of gas costs $1.25, and Leo Vance is 19 years old. He stands in the yard of his family's farm, 160 acres of central Illinois black dirt. The land is his now. His grandfather's heart had given out in the spring, right after planting. His grandmother had followed him 6 months later. A quiet fading. They said it was a broken heart. Leo believed it. His parents were long gone. A patch of ice on a county road in the winter of '71. So the farm, the house, the old equipment, it was all that was left. It was all on him. The land was paid for, a legacy of his grandfather's sweat. But there was no operating cash, no savings to speak of, just the crop in the field. A field of corn standing tall and golden under the October sun. He remembered his grandfather's words, spoken at the kitchen table just a year before. "They can take the crop in a bad year, son. They can take the money from the bank, but they can't take the dirt. Remember that. The dirt is enough." Leo held on to those words. They were all he had. He did the work. He babied the old International 806 tractor. He patched the tires on the ancient combine himself. He worked from sunup until he couldn't see his own hands in front of his face. And he got the crop out. Not a record yield, but an honest one, a good one. Enough to pay the property taxes, enough to buy seed for next year, enough to prove he could do it. But the corn sat in the wagons. It sat in the one small, dented grain bin. He needed to get it to the elevator in town. He needed a truck. There was only one man to call for that. The best, the most reliable. Frank Miller. Frank pulled his Freightliner cab over into the lane an hour later. He was 30 years old then, already 10 years into his career. He was building a business, making a name for himself. A name for being on time. A name for being efficient. He stepped out of the cab, looked around. He saw the old equipment. He saw the small grain cart. He saw the single undersized auger. And he saw Leo, a kid. 19 years old, but he looked 16. Skinny, tired, with dirt under his fingernails and worry in his eyes. Frank was a kind man. He walked over, put a hand on Leo's shoulder. "Son, you did good work here. Looks like a fine crop." Leo nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. I was hoping you could haul it for me." Frank's smile tightened just a little. He looked from the corn in the wagon to Leo, then back to his truck. A gleaming, powerful machine built for speed and volume. He took a slow breath. "I appreciate the call, son, I really do, but I can't haul this for you." The words hung in the quiet farmyard. Leo felt his stomach sink. "Why not? My money is as good as anyone's." Frank shook his head slowly. "Not about the money. It's about the time. It's about the risk." He gestured to the small auger. "Your setup here is slow. That little auger, that small grain cart, I'd be sitting here for an hour to get one load. My truck doesn't make money when it's sitting still. It's not personal, you understand. It's just business." Leo stood his ground. "I'll pay you for your time. I'll pay extra." Frank gave him a patient, fatherly look, the kind of look that is meant to soften a hard truth. "It's not just you, son. I've got 3 other farmers waiting on me today. The big guys, the ones with modern setups, grain legs that can fill my truck in 10 minutes. If I'm late for them, I lose their business. Not just for today, but for good." He looked Leo square in the eye. "I can't stake my whole day on a maybe. You're just a kid. You've got a lot to learn. This is one of those lessons. I'm sorry. I wish you the best." He turned and walked back to his truck. He didn't look back. The engine roared to life. The semi pulled out of the lane, and a cloud of dust was all that was left. Leo Vance stood there, alone. He didn't cry. He didn't swear. He watched the dust settle on the corn stalks. He felt the weight of Frank's words. Not the meanness. There was no meanness. That's what made it worse. It was the certainty, the calm, rational, friendly certainty that he was not worth the risk, that he was a problem to be managed, a liability. Just a kid. Have you ever been told you couldn't do something? Not by an enemy, not by a bully, but by someone who thought they were protecting you, by someone who thought they were teaching you a valuable lesson about your own limits. It's the kindest cuts that go the deepest, because you can't fight them with anger. Tell me in the comments if you've ever faced that kind of certainty, that quiet, well-meaning dismissal. Because what Leo Vance did next wasn't born from rage. It was born from a cold, hard decision made in the silence of that empty farmyard. He would never again depend on the mercy of another man's schedule. He would never again have to ask for permission. Not ever. He went inside the old farmhouse. The air was still and smelled of his grandmother's soap. He sat at the worn oak table. He looked at the framed photograph on the wall. His grandfather, squinting in the sun, standing in front of a tractor. "The dirt is enough." The words echoed in his head. He opened the bottom drawer of the kitchen buffet. Inside was a small metal box. Inside the box was an envelope. And inside the envelope was $2,800. The farm's entire savings. His inheritance. The emergency fund his grandmother had insisted they keep. He took the cash. The next morning, he didn't call another trucker. He got in his grandfather's old pickup truck, and he drove. He drove 200 miles south to a farm equipment auction he'd seen advertised in the paper. He walked through rows of massive, expensive machines, things he could only dream of owning. He ignored them all. He went to the back row, the row of forgotten things, the trade-ins and the write-offs, and there it was, a 1968 International Lodestar 1600, a single-axle grain truck. The paint was faded to a dull, chalky red. Rust was eating away at the fenders. The box on the back held, at most, 250 bushels. It was tiny. It was slow. It was perfect. The bidding was short. Nobody wanted it. Leo raised his hand. $2,650. Sold. He paid in cash. He spent the next 3 days getting it running well enough to make the trip home. The journey back was slow. The truck maxed out at 45 miles per hour. Every hill was a struggle. But when he pulled into his own farm lane, under his own power, he felt something shift inside him. He spent that winter in the machine shed. The shed was drafty. The wind howled through the cracks in the walls. He worked by the light of a single bare bulb. He pulled the engine out of that old truck, piece by piece. He had his grandfather's old manuals. He had his grandfather's old tools. He cleaned every part, replaced every gasket. His hands were cut and raw, stained with grease that wouldn't wash out. His neighbor Gus would come over sometimes. Gus was 70 years old, a retired mechanic. He'd watch Leo work for a while. Then he'd point to something. "You're going to want to check the timing on that." Or he'd show up with a box of old parts. "Found these cleaning out the garage. Thought you might have a use for them." Gus never asked for money. One day, Leo tried to pay him. Gus just waved his hand. "Don't be foolish. Your grandpa brought his combine over and helped me get my beans out in '67, the year my barn burned down. He never sent me a bill. He just said to pay it forward someday. So I'm paying it forward." By the time the snow melted, the truck was ready. The engine purred. It wasn't pretty, but it was strong. It was his. That harvest, and the next, and the one after that, Leo hauled his own grain. 250 bushels at a time. It took him weeks. The line at the elevator was long. He'd sit for hours, his little truck dwarfed by the massive semis. The other farmers would look over, some with pity, some with a kind of mild contempt. "Look at the kid in his toy truck. He's burning more fuel than his crop is worth." Frank Miller was there too, in his big, efficient Freightliner. He'd pull in, dump his load in 15 minutes, and be gone. He'd sometimes nod at Leo in line, a polite, distant acknowledgement. He never said a word about the little red truck. Leo never said a word back. He just waited his turn. He dumped his grain. He got his ticket. And he drove back for another load. The world saw a boy doing a man's job the hard way. They didn't see the truth. Leo wasn't just hauling grain. He was buying his freedom, one tiny load at a time. Let me tell you what happened over the next 25 years, because this is where the story of a boy in a small truck becomes something else entirely. This is where quiet work starts to make a very loud noise. 1985. Leo buys an adjoining 80 acres. The farm was in foreclosure. The bank was selling it cheap. He walked into the bank president's office, made an offer. The banker asked about his financing. Leo opened a briefcase, filled it with cash. The banker stopped asking questions. 1988. A good year. High yields, good prices. He sold the old International Lodestar to a teenager just starting out. Sold it for what he paid for it. Then he bought a 1975 Ford F700, a tandem axle truck. It could hold 400 bushels. It felt like a spaceship. He paid cash. 1992. Another 160 acres. The farmer was retiring. His kids didn't want the land. They wanted to sell to a big developer. Leo went to the farmer's house, sat at his kitchen table. He made an offer, a fair price, higher than the developer, and he promised the farmer one thing. I will never build a house on this land. I will only farm it. The farmer shook his hand. Leo paid cash. Through all of this, the witness was watching. Frank Miller saw it all. He drove the same roads. He saw the fence rows get pushed out as Leo's fields grew. He saw the new machine shed go up in '94, a massive, modern building. He saw the new grain bins, first one, then two, then a set of 6, gleaming in the sun. He'd hear the talk at the co-op. Did you hear what Vance's beans made this year? Unbelievable. He's trying some new method, no-till or something. Frank never joined the conversations. He just listened. He was a good man, a practical man, and the facts were becoming impossible to ignore. 1995. Leo Vance bought his first semi-truck, a used Peterbilt 379, long nose, classic lines. He paid cash. He didn't need it just for himself anymore. His neighbor, Gus, had retired from farming. Leo leased his land. And that year, he started hauling for another small farmer in the area, a man who had called Frank Miller, and had been told his setup was too slow, too much risk. Leo didn't see risk. He saw himself 12 years earlier. He hauled the man's grain, didn't charge him a dime extra for the time. Word got around. By 2001, Vance Farms was over 1,200 acres, all of it paid for. No debt, not $1. He had a fleet of 3 Peterbilts. He had 2 full-time employees. He hauled his own grain, and he hauled the grain for a dozen other farmers, the small ones, the ones the other trucking companies called the leftovers. Leo called them neighbors. He built a business model not on pure efficiency, but on loyalty, on memory. He never forgot what it felt like to be left in the dust. Then came 2008. The world economy shuddered. Wall Street gambled and lost, and the shock waves reached all the way to central Illinois. The local grain elevator, a family-owned business for 80 years, had been sold to a national conglomerate a few years prior. That conglomerate had over-leveraged. It was built on a mountain of debt, and now the mountain was collapsing. The elevator was going bankrupt. The news hit the town like a tornado. Farmers were panicked. Their grain was tied up. Their payments were frozen. The company announced they were selling the facility, most likely to another massive corporation, one based in Kansas City or Minneapolis, a company that wouldn't know their names, wouldn't care about their community. The town council held a public meeting. The high school gymnasium was packed. Farmers in seed corn hats and muddy boots, worry etched on their faces. The mayor explained the situation. The bank was taking bids. They expected a quick sale to an outside investment group. The mood in the room was grim. It felt like a funeral, the funeral for local control, for the way things used to be. Then, a voice from the back of the room, quiet, calm. Not loud, but it cut through the murmuring. "I'll buy it." Everyone turned. Standing near the back wall was Leo Vance. He was 44 years old now, no longer a skinny kid. He was a man made of work and weather. He never spoke at public meetings. He just did his work. The mayor squinted. "Leo? Is that you?" "Yes, it's me. I'll buy the elevator." A wave of whispers washed over the crowd. The council president, a man named Henderson, spoke up. "Leo, that's a generous thought, but we're talking about a multi-million-dollar transaction here. The financing alone would be a nightmare." Leo took a few steps forward. He wasn't carrying a briefcase. He wasn't holding a folder of documents. His hands were empty. "I don't need financing." He said the words simply, like he was stating the color of the sky. "I'll pay cash." The gymnasium went completely, utterly silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the dusty wood floor. Cash. For the entire elevator. The scales, the bins, the offices, the land. It was an impossible idea. And in that silence, one man felt the weight of 40 years of history settle on his shoulders. Frank Miller was on the town council. He sat at the long table at the front of the gym. He stared at Leo, and he felt something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't regret, not exactly. It was awe. It was the dizzying, stomach-churning feeling of watching a story you thought you understood completely rewrite itself in front of your eyes. He had watched the kid. He had watched him from a distance. He saw the land purchases in the county records. He saw the new trucks on the road. But he had seen it all as a series of disconnected data points. He had never put it all together. He had never understood the scale of it, the relentless, quiet, unstoppable force of it. Until this moment. The kid he had left in the driveway, the kid who was too much of a risk, was now the only one in the room without any risk at all. He was the only one who was safe. And he was about to buy the whole damn town. The deal was done a month later. It was the largest private cash transaction in the county's history. The sign out front was taken down. A new one went up. Vance Grain Cooperative. The first thing Leo did was issue checks to every farmer who had lost money in the bankruptcy. He made them whole, with his own money. The second thing he did was call a meeting with the local haulers. Frank Miller was there. He had to be. He needed the elevator's business to survive. He was now, in effect, working for Leo Vance. After the group meeting, Leo asked Frank to stay behind. They sat in the manager's office, the same office where generations of men had made deals and built futures. Sunlight streamed through the dusty window. For a long time, neither man spoke. Finally, Frank broke the silence. His voice was raspy. "I was wrong." He said it to the floor. He couldn't look at Leo. "Back in '83, that day at your farm, I was wrong about you. I should have taken a chance." Leo was quiet for a moment. He looked at Frank, a man who was now nearing retirement, a man who had worked hard his whole life, a good man, a decent man. When Leo finally spoke, his voice was not angry. It was not triumphant. It was the voice of a man stating a simple, undeniable fact. "No, Frank, you weren't wrong." Frank looked up, confused. Leo continued. "You made a good business decision for you that day. You looked at the situation, you assessed the risk, and you made the logical choice to protect your own bottom line. There's no shame in that." He leaned forward slightly. "But you saw a kid. You didn't see the dirt under his feet. You saw a problem. You didn't see the promise. Your good business decision forced me to make a better one for myself. One that wasn't about a single day's profit, but about the next 40 years. He stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the massive grain bins that now bore his name. In a way, I should probably thank you. You showed me, at 19 years old, that the only person you can truly count on is yourself. You taught me that dependency is a cage. That was a lesson worth more than any single hauling fee. The words hung in the air between them. It wasn't an insult. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just the truth. A truth so clear and sharp, it redefined their entire shared history. Frank Miller had made a choice based on what he could see. Leo Vance had made a life based on what he could build. And the story doesn't end there. Because a legacy is not about what you own. It's about what you create for others. The first policy Leo implemented at Vance Grain Cooperative was called the First Harvest Rule. Any farmer hauling their very first crop under their own name, or any farmer with less than 200 acres, gets priority scheduling. They go to the front of the line. Their trucks get unloaded first, no matter how slow their setup is. No one is ever again too much risk. Then he started a scholarship. He went to the local high school, set up a trust fund. A scholarship for any student from a farm family who wanted to go to a trade school for diesel mechanics or agricultural business. He called it the Frank Miller Good Business Scholarship. Not out of spite. Frank's name wasn't on the plaque to mock him. It was a reminder, a quiet, powerful reminder that good business and good community should be the same thing. That efficiency and humanity don't have to be enemies. The young woman who handed Frank the scale ticket in the opening of our story, her name is Sarah. She was the first recipient of that scholarship. She got her degree in agribusiness. Today, she manages the entire co-op. She's Leo's niece. He's teaching her the business. He's paying it forward. The co-op has 2 full-time mechanics on staff. Their only job is to help local farmers. If a farmer's combine breaks down during harvest, they go out to the field. They help fix it. At cost. No profit. Just a helping hand. Just like Gus helped Leo in that drafty shed all those years ago. The dirt is enough, but a neighbor's help sure makes things easier. And what about the artifact? The physical piece of the past that brings the story into the present? If you walk into the main office of the Vance Grain Cooperative today, you will see it, hanging on the wall behind the main desk. The steering wheel from that 1968 International Lodestar 1600. The plastic is worn smooth, cracked from 1,000 hours of sun and 1,000,000 tense grips. Leo mounted it on a piece of barnwood from his grandfather's old shed. Underneath it, there's a small, simple brass plaque. It doesn't have a famous quote. It doesn't have a line of scripture. It just has 9 words. You don't need permission to haul your own harvest. Sometimes, at the end of a long day, Leo, now in his late 50s, will stand in the quiet office. He'll look at that wheel. He'll touch the worn surface. And for a moment, he's 19 again, standing in a dusty driveway, alone, with a full crop, an empty wallet, and a future that felt both terrifying and possible. He remembers the feeling, the cold dread mixed with a hot spark of defiance. He never lets himself forget it. The most dangerous word isn't no. It's not, I hate you. It's not, you're a fool. It's, no, because I'm trying to help you. It's the certainty of others that builds the highest walls, the assumption of your limits, delivered with a kind, reasonable smile. Leo Vance wasn't fighting a villain. He was fighting a good man, a decent man, making a practical decision. And that is the hardest fight of all. It cannot be won with anger. It cannot be won with arguments. It can only be won with 40 years of work, with dirt and grease and long haul nights. It can only be won by building something so solid, so real, so undeniable, that the old certainty just crumbles into dust. Right now, somewhere in the world, a young person is being told they are too much risk. A dreamer is being told to be realistic. An innovator is being told, that's not how we do things here. They are being handed a version of their future written by someone else. If you know someone who needs to hear this story, someone who needs to be reminded that the dirt is enough, that their own 2 hands are enough, share this story with them. Let them know they don't need permission to haul their own harvest. Thank you for listening, and subscribe for more stories of quiet work and loud results.